welcome our panel and to review with you social and emotional learning and the path that will be taking as we move forward. So we'll kick off with our panelists. They'll each give you an introduction of who they are, and then we will be sharing what is their absolute favorite self-care activity that they've been utilizing during our COVID times. So Tim, you are closest to me. If you'll kick it off, please.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Tim Hagan with Education Associates. I'm the president and CEO, and we've been just celebrating our 40th anniversary of being in business this year. So we're pretty excited to be here. And to jump right into what my favorite self-care activity is, I'm going to have to say it's a combination of two things. One, I try to exercise a little bit every day just to get the frustrations out. And then secondly, I also meditate. It's been something I started just before COVID hit, and it's been very helpful, let me assure you. Never did I ever think I would be admitting to people that I meditate, but it's been terrific. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll talk about mindfulness and how it plays a role in with that social and emotional learning today. Lawrence, I think you are next. Tim, if you will introduce yourself, please.
So yeah, my name is Lawrence Franchini. I'm the VP of Sales for Brainco, and Brainco is a neuroscience startup out of the Harvard iLab. So we've been in business for 4 years, but what I've been doing to keep myself sane is, I'm going to say a couple of dirty words. One is CrossFit, right? And then the other one, yeah. See, and if that doesn't work, then there's always bourbon. So that's my. Yeah.
Oh, I have to chime back in, being from Kentucky.
I'm a kid in Kentucky. I get you.
I absolutely encourage anybody to use a little bourbon in their day.
Right? Exactly.
While you meditate.
Exactly.
That's before and after. I think is the correct dosage.
That's great.
That's fantastic. And Tim Gifford, please.
Hi, I'm Tim Gifford. I'm the founder and chief scientist at Mobi Robotics, and we produce systems to work with children with special needs. And my favorite self-care is to play softball with my daughter. It doesn't happen all the time, I must admit, but when it does, it's the best. She's 17, so take it any chance I get.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's always a great path to take. And I think, Sherry, you're next, please.
Take that opportunity. My daughter played softball all through high school and the college, and so I miss it. My name is Sherry Smith Dodson. I founded a company called Discover Science for Kids in 2009 as a way to bring science innovation and entrepreneurship to after-school programs and summer camps. And it kind of just grew to where I started working with media as a female face and created Miss Science. There's not a lot of women faces out there in media as science communicators. I refer to myself as a science communicator, not a scientist. I came from the classroom originally, actually. And so I just do a lot of professional development. I work with businesses, understand the needs of schools, and to develop programs as well. And I'm just really happy to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. Oh, and I've been playing golf. That's been my outlet during COVID. So golf with a little bit of bourbon on the golf course. There you go.
Nice.
Fantastic. And Mark, we've got you.
Hello, good morning. Mark Zimmerman, CEO, founder of the Social Express. I'm also a father of identical twin boys who are on the autism spectrum, which is how I got into this industry, helping them make their first friends. So we developed a product called the Social Express that focuses on social emotional learning. And then we continued with an anti-bullying program that called Cool School. And then the last product we have now released is called Teen Career Path, which is a career exploration video game. And what makes our curriculum different and unique is that we utilize high quality animation, kind of like what you're seeing here, but even more on steroids on the animation and interactivity side. And we're cloud-based for 24/7 access anywhere. So it's ideal for today's distant learning requirements. I enjoy drinking bourbon with my cereal in the morning. I like to exercise, and I jam in a rock band with my twins.
Those are all fantastic ways to
Great.
do a little self-care. So thank you all for joining us on the panel today. We're really, social and emotional learning is near and dear to my heart. I think it is one of those unsung necessities that we really should be and could be addressing with our students, not just talking about math and reading and how you succeed there, but also developing those soft skills and how those fit into the future. So the first question that I'm going to kick out to our panel is, what are those soft skills that are fitting into the career pathways, and which soft skills are you seeing more and more of a need for as we start moving forward? Tim, if you want to kick us off with your answer, Tim Hagen, please.
Sure. I think that this COVID-19 has really changed the dynamics of the need, or maybe even where people always realize that SEL is truly important, but with what going on has actually changed that dynamic tremendously. So a lot of these kids are isolated and they're not with their typical friends. And so a lot of the social skills that we're seeing is really having to do with self-esteem and social skills, and really being able to have awareness of diversity. And a lot of the areas that we have always included with our program that's been approved and validated by the U.S. Department of Ed, and it's also been a model program with CASE. We've really tried to help address those key issues that teachers are telling us their kids need. So, I'd like to kind of bounce this around with some of the other folks, but those are some of the key areas we're seeing. It's just so important these days to help these kids, whether they're at home or when they start getting back into school.
Absolutely. Anyone else down the panel that would like to add in?
Yeah.
Sure. When it comes to, I think you asked, Sarah, about employment, right? Career paths and soft skills?
The soft skills that fit into our career pathways, and what should our students be developing?
Well, I think employers now more than ever are looking for people that have, abilities to converse with others, the ability to listen to others and their opinions. They need the leadership. They need to be time managed. Like they have to understand how to deal with pressure. So conflict resolution is a huge one that employers are looking for. So when someone doesn't agree with you, you have the ability to work through the disagreement and come to an amicable conclusion. So those are some of the things that I think that our people are really looking for as they hire new employees in the workplace.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say too, when looking at these, what we used to call maybe soft skills, when they're transitioning in education a little more to calling them essential skills in the workforce, we kind of tend to forget that creative piece as well. So, creativity is one of the essential things, as well as growth mindset with that active learning. And then, also leadership skills, and then, diversity and cultural intelligence. And I think now we're seeing that's more critical in the workplace than ever.
Yeah. To piggyback onto that, is the emotional intelligence of today's worker has to be somebody that can actually get along intergenerational. So some of the things that we are looking for now, and we see now more prevalent than ever, is how you can communicate across generations, because you have in the workforce, you go from the Gen Y all the way through to the baby boomers and everything in between. So how can you adapt to fit everybody's communication style? How do you adapt to fit their needs? How do you adapt to coach them, develop them? And what does development look like? And the norms that we've, that it may have been, 10, 20 years ago are out the window. And with COVID as well, we've also had to adapt on the fly of how we prepare our students, but more importantly, how we can adapt and show that in the workforce, you can be productive in a different manner than traditionally. So, we don't normally have to be inside the office to be as creative as we can. And the same thing in the classroom, there is an opportunity that we can show our students, there is opportunity for you as well to be creative and to have your voice heard and to be socially engaging.
I think it's
Yeah.
important too to bend the classroom a little bit, to have some flexibility to allow these to be embedded into subject areas, and also kind of break down the silos of how we teach. We tend to teach in silos instead, and I think that's why we're looking at social and emotional learning as it is today and a need for it.
That's fantastic. So that brings up a great point. How are you seeing social and emotional learning and readiness being addressed into each of those different segments? Do you see them pushing together? What's the plan as schools are trying to figure out how they come back in the fall?
So I'd like to jump in on that too, and just to say that we're really working with the younger kids, even pre-K and then in elementary, and we're doing a lot of training, particularly with kids with different needs, on learning readiness. And so, the kinds of skills that really help them to be successful. So joining a group, things like raising hands, sharing ideas, and how to do that interaction, so that when they are in the group, they have more confidence and the ability to then be successful in that environment. And then these can help them grow as they go on to employment opportunities in the future.
I'm going to jump in. I think that's a great point. One of the things that we have seen with the educators we work with is it really depends. And what it depends on is not so much what we offer as what the schools are looking for. And what I mean by that is some schools literally have individual classes that address these soft skills and these very important skills that we're talking about. Other schools truly want to integrate it into other classes that they're teaching, whether it's career awareness or career exploration or some other class. They're integrating these skills within those other lessons. So I think you have to have something that is flexible enough that the teachers can use those lessons in whatever manner they are set up to work with their students with. I think that's a key point.
Can I piggyback on this too, Sarah?
Always, Mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So all good points from everyone up here. I think the biggest thing that we need to be aware of as the kids return back to school is going to be their classroom readiness. Before COVID, most kids, I think it was like 80% of kindergarten teachers report that they spend, almost all their day on behavioral problems and 20% teaching what they should be teaching. So before COVID, we had issues with behavioral management in schools. But now more than ever, when these kids return back to class, we are going to need to absolutely focus first on their social and emotional well-being and find out how they are, what's going on at home. I think another thing that we're overlooking in this whole ordeal, and I saw on the news today that 1 in 3 adults is suffering right now from anxiety and depression. I think it's 1 in 4 from depression and 1 in 3 in anxiety. So now, this is such unique what's happening with COVID is that their kids' parents, who they normally rely on for support emotionally and everything else, the parents are a bundle of a mess right now. So we have to figure out how to help the parents help their kids while we're all helping the kids also be ready for school.
Parent engagement, and can I jump in there? Sorry. I think parent engagement's huge in this as well. And I think it's teaching the parents, because really we can look at social and emotional learning for adults as well. And how does that work? And when you look especially at Title I schools that are required to have parent engagement programs, what does that look like? Is it donuts with dad, or is it a reading night, or do we want to go a little bit deeper and really engage parents through active learning, whether it be social and emotional skills, whether it be literacy, or combined all together?
That's excellent.
Yeah, there's certainly, just to finish the point, there are definitely tools to help with that too. I mean, our tool, it has an interface for the facilitator, which can be a parent or a teacher, and then it has how the child is interacting with the robot and a tablet. But on the facilitator screen, we actually give advice and prompting instructions. So to help that person work with the child, because particularly with kids with special needs, it may be appropriate at a certain point to provide a prompt or help, or it might be more appropriate to actually wait a moment and let them work on it. The very natural inclination is to, help right away. But it's, sometimes it's good. And then there's very systematic ways to slowly back away with your help or to increase it. And I think that it's a great opportunity to give the parents and even the teachers who are very stressed out that little extra bit of support, while they're interacting with the kids.
Yeah, I think engagement though is going to be the biggest thing because we saw the failure of remote education because the content wasn't engaging. When students come back to the classroom, how are we measuring the engagement levels there? And the lack of scientific evidence for engagement in curriculum is a huge gap that has to be addressed. And there's plenty of companies now racing on that forefront to figure out how to scientifically and accurately measure student engagement, as well as remotely and in the classroom, and for those schools that are virtual or blended of some point, how you keep them engaged and ensure that students are active, participating, and where they need to be. Remote is huge because that was one of the biggest failures that we saw in the education system here in the US, that there was no preparation, there was really no appetite, there was nothing here, and students were going missing and no clue and no way to get them recovered. I think there was one of the articles I was reading, it was almost 11,000 students that were missing in the LA Unified alone, and that's a huge gap that we have to figure out and overcome.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear what everyone thinks. It leads right into this beautiful point of where is the most pressing need for those students that, especially the ones that went missing, that teachers, no one from the school district really heard from them after they all kind of went home. What's going to be the biggest need for those students for their social and emotional learning and going forward?
Well, I think that you got to address the equity thing right out of the gate. Out of those 11,000 students in LAUSD, it would be nice to have some statistics on who actually had an internet connection, who had a device. Did they have the means to go to the school and get the device? Were the parents made aware that there were devices being given away by the school? So I think that that's got to be front and center for us to make sure that all kids have access to whatever it is, whether at school or at home. I mean, even when school's in session, the truancy rate is off the hook in so many states. So even being at home, now they're home and they don't have the devices. So I think that to level the playing field, we have to make sure that everyone can have access to whatever it is that all their peers are accessing. I think for the SEL to be effective, the teachers got to be able to master Zoom and master these distant learning tools that they're being given to. When this all happened here in San Diego, nobody could figure out even how to do a Zoom meeting, and that was very frustrating for my kiddos in high school that were graduating. Their teachers didn't even do Zoom because they didn't even know how to do it. So teachers need to be prepared and have some professional development around how to use these tools. And I think once again, the parents need to be involved. They need to have tips at dinner to talk about things with their kiddos about how they're feeling and what are their expectations, and just keeping everybody calm and helping them with their self-regulation.
I think too, to kind of build on that, is when we look at the parent, a lot of the kids that go missing are the parents that probably feel really helpless at this point to be able to help their kids. I think especially if you look at middle school, high school level. But even at the elementary level, what are we doing as educators to be like, how can educators model what they're doing in the classroom for a parent so it transfers so that the parent is actually able to help their students? And that's something that we don't see a lot of content out there for parent engagement, where they're showing videos on this, is because they're still going to be held accountable to the standards regardless. And so now a parent is pushed into the point where they also need to understand how those standards work, because the first thing a kid says is, that's not how my teacher does it. So we've got to have things to model that parent engagement.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to add one last point that I think would be a helpful tool for the parent. Assuming that they are home and they are aware of what's going on with their kiddo, I think a good idea would be like 5 minutes before the class starts to just have the parents there before the kids are even there, and the teacher can explain to the parents what the lesson is about, what they're doing, and give them some accountability and some actionable items that they can do to support the teacher. So, after the Zooming ends and they're trying to do homework. I think so many parents just have no idea even what the students are doing. And it would be nice for the teachers to bring the parents into the conversation before they even start the classroom.
I think this is also where you have to look at and say there needs to be a revolution in the way teachers are actually even prepared to go into the classroom for today. Like the methods and procedures that are being taught today are not even close to what is actually relevant in the world today. And a perfect evidence of that is just how ill-prepared everybody was for remote learning. And also to kind of address the equity question, that's also something that is obviously very near and dear to my heart, but I will say the state of New Hampshire actually probably did it best, to the point where they did, and they had sign-up days, and they did a drive, and they actually made sure that they had Chromebooks out, and if you did not own one, you could come out and get one. And I think it was a phenomenal way that they addressed that. The other thing is that parents also, there's a lot dumped onto parents right now. And, they went from, hey, I'm a parent and I work now. I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, I'm a daycare, and I'm an employee. So to juggle that in the household today is very difficult for them. So this is one of also the first times I would say that the remote learning is actually where we have to take a step back and look at how elsewhere in the world it's being done, because it's been done for years remotely in what we call third world countries that have been more successful, and they've had more online learning platforms and have adapted a digital appetite much more so than what the United States has. And they're able to look at student populations from around their country. They could all get onto a Google Meet, and they can all adjust on an on-learning platform and actually adjust the questions based upon the student's engagement, so if they're answering it too easily and it's going fast, so they raise the difficulty. If it's actually going too hard for them, they're able to slow it down, so they actually can get personalized, individualized learning. And this is a key thing that I think we have to do a much better job of here in the United States, because otherwise our students are going to be the ones left behind and further down the gap.
Well, I think that you hit the nail on the head about getting us doing a much better job of truly bridging that digital divide. I saw a report done by Mailings Clearinghouse, and one of the things that they said was something like only 21% of the school districts in the country was really prepared to handle remote learning or learning online, simply because the students either didn't have devices, or if they had the devices, they didn't have internet access. So in places like LA, or in my hometown, Jefferson County, Kentucky, there is a lot of internet access and there are a lot of devices, but across the rural parts of this country, they certainly do need to improve that. And so in the meantime, we still need to address these social and emotional learning issues, whether that be offline while the digital divide is being closed. So I do feel like that you have to have some sort of either or hybrid approach. It can be done technically or digitally online for those people that have access to that. But for those that don't, we still need to provide these resources to these parents and students who don't have access to the internet and or their computer. And even those people that do have a computer at home with internet access, many cases the parent is working from home and the child doesn't have a lot of time on that device. So I agree with everything you're saying. I'm just going to add one point, and that be making certain that those students have access to the same content, whether they have digital access or not.
Content's critical too in this, right? I'm a huge fan of the show *Halt and Catch Fire*, and they were talking about building the PCs and the days of building the computers, but they always talked about the thing that got you to the thing. The thing's the computer, it's the device that gets us to the thing, which is quality curriculum, it's engagement, it's educational pieces for hands-on learning through makerspace products. So that's really, the devices are just the first step.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mark. I think the thing that we're overlooking too is that teachers are being given a huge responsibility, and not only from the distant learning perspective of figuring all that out, but before COVID, even in the classroom, teachers had a difficulty with social emotional learning and how to weave it into the curriculum, and everyone is trying to figure out how to do that. And the teachers need better tools, they need better training, they're not psychologists, they're teaching foundational curriculum skills. And for them to get cross the chasm into that world of emotional intelligence and try to figure out how to do that with their regular teaching, I think it's very difficult for them. I think it's something that we need to help them with and give them the proper tools. Anybody have a feeling around that?
Well, and we did have a question from the audience that kind of plays into that, is how can after school programs, how can they step in? How can they help the schools this year as well?
Well,
I think
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. After school programs are critical. First of all, after school programs are a great place to help with social emotional learning because you're not necessarily tied to standards, because that's an informal learning space rather than a standards-based learning space in your traditional classroom or classroom space. So informal education is critical. It's also what pushes and advances career choice more so than being in the classroom. So if you have an after school program, the modeling of these social emotional skills through different things that they can do, that we were talking about, those skills that are vital to the workforce. And I love the fact that this is a great place for project-based learning. With our curriculum, science, innovation, and entrepreneurship, it was through project-based learning that we could just embed those social emotional skills into.
Yeah, we've been looking at similar things in being able to have curriculum in the classroom and then have that same curriculum available to the kids in the home. And so we have different size products essentially, so that there's a school unit, and then there's a much smaller one that's available for parents, and the curriculum can move between the two environments. And it's really good because it provides that engagement piece. So even though it's remote, the child is engaging with the robot and is able to then go through the different activities. And then that supports the work back into the classroom and with the curriculum. And it also provides the ability to actually practice different social situations, so that the child can, in a safe environment, experiment with how to carry on a conversation and how to do different key steps. And one of the key things that happens there is that they get some confidence, because particularly with the kids with autism, often they don't realize when they do something that's really rude or inappropriate. And so here's their new friend who they just insulted without really understanding it. And so they become very tentative in their interactions. But what happens is we can give them the opportunity to go through a few interactions successfully, because the robot is infinitely patient and will guide them back to a more appropriate behavior. And now they can go into interactions with their cohorts and with their families with that, having gone through it successfully a few times, and then they can use that to build upon. And we see this as being very successful with the general population, as well as the kids with special needs. So I think we're really moving into a new future with that kind of opportunity.
Fantastic. And we did have another question from our audience. I know we're running a couple minutes late. So if we don't get to your questions, or if you'd like more information, our panelists will all be down on our expo hall floor. Feel free to head to the expo, and then when you see their name, you can click on the arrow pointing out and it'll say go to them, and then you can track them down in the expo hall and ask any additional questions that you have. Our next question is about funding, so I do want to call out that we do have a panel this afternoon about finding the funding. So if you're wondering how and where you can find it, definitely feel free to join that panel. They'll get a little more in depth about funding and where they can find it from. So each of you, I know you do have your products. When you're working with the school and they're saying, I need to find the funding, where can I budget this? And if you don't know, please don't feel that you have to answer, but where are the schools telling you their funding is coming out for those social and emotional products, and where they're getting the funding for that? So we'll just go right down the line. Tim, where are your clients finding that funding from?
Seem to see a lot of people using their IDEA money, but that's who we tend to work with, or the special ed departments.
Fantastic. Lawrence.
So because of our product being so versatile, it can come from the athletic budget, from the special education budget as well. So, I mean, it really can be found anywhere.
Excellent. Tim Gifford.
Yes, we're serving the special ed department, so we track right into that type of funding. And we also are finding that we can justify further billing. So we're able to approach Medicaid reimbursement as well. And then there's also opportunities where the school can get units and then put them into families' homes, and then be able to provide additional time on task, and then be able to get additional reimbursement for that.
Excellent. Sherry.
I'm really big on professional development funding, actually, because to me, with what I do, at least, it's a lot about teaching the teachers how to embed this into their everyday practices. So then it's a sustainable thing as well. So there's a lot of growth to that.
Excellent. Mark.
We're seeing a lot of our funding coming from the CARES Act. And when the HEROES Act gets passed, we expect to see some funding from that as well. But most of all of our purchases in the last 100 orders we've received is coming from the CARES Act.
Excellent. All great resources for the schools to use. I know we are about 5 minutes over, so we are going to wrap today. If you do have additional questions, please join the panelists on the expo hall floor. Find them. Feel free to pick their brains, ask more questions, get more information, or set up a demo at a later time. Panelists, thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic. I think we could all talk all day about this topic, so we appreciate you taking time out of your very valuable days to join us and to give an overview. Thank you for all of our audience for joining us. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the expo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.